Welcome to the Smoke Break. We're here every Sunday from 9 to 10 a.m. on Shady Pines Radio, as well as Pretty Dope Xperience Radio. I'm your host, your old pal Zane, and the rest of our hosts will be introduced in just a second. But right now, coming to the stage, very talented, very wonderful. Please welcome to the stage, Micki XO. Thank you so much.
Hello, Smoke Break audience. My name is Micki XO. I'm so excited to be here today. I'm going to sing a few tunes for you real quick before we get started with our podcast. The first song I'm going to sing is about finally loving myself after going through a really hard time in life, and it's called Moonlight. Especially in the got beauty and a brain. Oh, you're the only one I crave. Under the city lights, under the I've been naked and afraid. I've been broken down and betrayed, but all the enough of you. I love every curve, it's true. Especially in the got beauty and a brain. Oh, you're the only one I crave. Under the city lights, under the I know you'll never break my heart. I know it's cliche, but I fell hard. Step that wouldn't take to know you'll never walk away. No one can ever come between. You're the only one I'll ever need. It's not a step that I won't take to know you'll never walk away. I know you'll never walk away. Thank you all very much. This next song I wrote about feeling like I was trapped and I kept ending up back in the same place mentally. This is called Fake Gold. Fake gold. Fake gold. How did I end up in this place? Feeling cheaper than fake gold. How did I end up in this place? Where my emotions take control. Defeated again, I can't take anymore. Please don't let me lose myself. Ooh, how did I end up in this place? Feeling cheaper than fake gold. How did I end up in this place? Where my emotions take control. Thank you all. Thank you so much. This last song is a song I wrote about being bipolar and the constant struggle of feeling like you don't want to get lost between half of yourself. Oh, the song is called War. Angry, gnashing teeth. Just to a smile so sweet. To fold into one. My mental origami. Run, run, baby, run away. Adrenaline is rushing me. I'm pretty poison, do you wanna taste? Choking on my sanity. I'm at war with myself. The reflection in the mirror. Even when I can't see her. And I'm scared of my own mind. Desperate to be whole with it. But I've lost control again. There's a monster inside me, stealing all the air I breathe. And I've tried, yeah, I've tried to fix it. Up, down, never middle ground. All the leaves are cold and brown. Trying to fit in as a misfit. Run, run, baby, run away. Adrenaline is rushing me. I'm pretty poison, do you wanna taste? Choking on my sanity. I'm at war with myself. The reflection in the mirror. Even when I can't see her. And I'm scared of my own mind. Desperate to be whole with it. But I've lost control again. Cannot feel anything anymore. A rattle to my core. Tick, ticking time bomb you can't ignore. Feels like I'm losing my own war. Cannot feel anything anymore. Rattle to my core. Tick, ticking time bomb you can't ignore. Feels like I'm losing my own war. Thank you all so much for listening.
That has been Micki XO, and we will be right back after a commercial break. And welcome back to the Smoke Break. We're here every Sunday from 9 to 10 a.m. on Shady Pines Radio, as well as Pretty Dope Experience Radio. I'm your host, your old pal Zane, here with Zoe Schwartz.
Hello.
And Micki XO.
Hey, yo.
Thank you so much for that musical performance. That was super dope.
Thank you so much. I had a good time doing it.
Yeah. The something that you had said was, I'm at war with myself. How does that lyric go? Just
I'm at war with myself, a reflection in the mirror, even when I can't see her.
Ooh, bars. I'm not allowed in them. Okay. No, I think I really just can empathize with that, because I feel like that kind of connects to, like, for me at least, having like a breakdown. It's just like I'm at war with myself. I'm fighting myself. I'm fighting my own emotions. What place does a breakdown kind of have for you in your life and kind of your creative process?
Unfortunately, a big one.
I can relate.
Back in the day, I was misdiagnosed with depression, and I would have a pretty serious breakdown about once or twice a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to grow from it. Now that I'm properly diagnosed, it's happened, I think, once in the last 3 years. So
wow,
progress.
Congrats.
Yeah,
that's huge progress.
It wasn't as insanely intense as it was before. I still have like smaller breakdowns, but not like huge ones like before.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that, because I kind of recently myself just had like a period where it was like everything just kind of got overwhelming, and I just had to like take a step back from myself and from the things that like I really enjoyed, and had to, just take some time to reconnect. Zoe, what about you? What about breakdowns kind of resonates with you?
I don't know. I mean, I can relate as well. I had like I got kind of depressed, like, or really depressed actually after I graduated from grad school, which is like a weird thing. I don't know if you guys can relate to that, but like sometimes like after a big like exciting thing, it was just like so much momentum like building.
Yeah.
And I got really, really like more depressed than I had been in a really long time. But I also think it motivated me to like push myself to figure out who I was like after school, you know? So
yeah.
I think there's growth involved too.
Yeah, and I think that's like kind of an important thing to acknowledge is that like there can be a lot of growth that comes out of that, because I feel like when it's happening, we're just like, oh no, I'm having a breakdown. Oh no, I'm not my best self. But like being able to look at that, you know, almost like clarity that you have afterwards of just like, okay, something I think you had said earlier is just like kind of finding out the people who are there for you, you know, the people who can handle that.
Yeah, absolutely. You find out, I think, a lot of things, at least I do when I have my breakdowns, is when you're in them, they're really intense and you obviously don't want to be there. But after kind of the dust is settled, I found out like who's in my corner. I usually have some kind of revelation about myself. I find a lot of solace in art and like using that as a tool for my art and making sure that I'm expressing it in a healthy way and kind of getting it fully out of me.
Yeah, yeah. Do you ever feel like expressing things through art kind of like helps you, you know, either through that breakdown or almost preventative of the breakdown of like, if I'm processing everything through art, then I don't have this big revelation of just like, oh my God, everything's too much. Do you feel like that's ever the case?
Or is it after kind of usually?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that's the case. I feel like, as wrong as it probably is to say, some of my best artwork comes from breakdowns. And so
Sure.
not so much that I welcome them, but it's a opportunity, and I like to take that opportunity to really make something good out of it and make it like a worthwhile breakdown. You know, it's not just a breakdown that's a crazy moment. It's a breakdown that's going to give me something out of it. So I'm going to get some kind of clarity, some kind of art, something valuable from it.
Yeah. So you're just less afraid of it.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
So if somebody were like having a breakdown, what would you think would be something that you could do that would be supportive, Zoe?
Well, I guess honestly, it's really good to help. Like, I think a good quality if you have, well, one, I was going to say like something I think that you were saying, like if you're someone who has like knows your patterns around your mental health, or, you know, if you have a cyclical, like, you know, a mood disorder that is cyclical by nature, which I think a lot of mood, you know, I think that's common, but
sure,
I think it's super valuable to know that, right? Because then like, it's almost like you're like, this isn't going to be the last one. Unfortunately, like I know this is part of my pattern and part of my like mental cycle, you know? So I think figuring out a way to like find the silver lining and figuring out a way to like channel it into your art and sort of like embrace that this is like part of your experience, like probably helps not feel like this is the end of the world. Every time it happens, you're kind of like, okay, well, I know I can learn from this.
Yeah, I know it's only going to be a certain amount of time.
Yeah. But then to answer your question, Zane, I was thinking like, and I feel like we've talked about this before, but like when you have like a lot of people that, when you have friends that struggle, where I do too, you know, that like letting people know what is helpful when you're not struggling as much can be a really valuable asset for the friendship and for like you and the support that you get, because just like then people know what you need when they're going through that.
Well, and I think even just kind of explaining what would be most helpful when you're not in crisis, you know, because like crisis is kind of what I would make the equivalent of like having a breakdown. Is like
it's another way of saying it. Crisis breakdown.
Yeah. But I mean, I think like that was something my mom always tried to get me to do, was be like, hey, tell me what you need when you're not in this fucking very intense high emotion mood, because like she wants to help, but when I don't even know what I'm looking for in those moments.
Yeah,
absolutely. My mom is like my biggest supporter, best friend, everything, which I don't know if that sounds corny to say.
No, I like that.
But
mine is too.
She was for a long time the only one that saw me when I had these intense breakdowns or anything, and I felt awful because she would always say, what can I do to help? And I had to just tell her, I don't know. Like, I don't know what you can do. And like, she'd be like, do you want a hug? And I was like, sure. But it didn't really fix anything. Or she's like, do you want me to be like honest with you, like kind of straight talk you? Do you want me to like coddle you a little bit? And it was just so different every time. I could just never give her an answer.
Yeah.
But I know she really wanted to help. And so once the dust settled, I kind of would reflect on it and try to think of, okay, well, what would have helped in that situation? And really, there isn't anything. I tend to self-isolate when I'm in that situation. But when I come out of it, that's when I want the love, the hugs, all that kind of stuff, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I think like even just making a point of, hey, when I come out of this, I'm going to need a little bit of extra support, you know? While I'm in it, I don't know what I want. But, you know, when I'm out of it, these are the things that I'm looking for.
Yeah. I like the way you're describing it too, like when the dust settles, because that makes me think about it, like how it's like a storm kind of, and why there's so much like lack of clarity in that, because there's so many things happening at once and so many of our issues get like brought up and swirling around, so I like that, like the dust settles. Cause it's almost like nothing is really clear when it's all stormy like that,
Yeah. No, I can definitely relate to that kind of dust settling feeling of just like, okay, I was there. Sorry, that was really intense. I can acknowledge, but now that like I'm feeling less like that, and I think like the support that comes after is super important because like I said, in the moment, like we really don't know what we want, but like afterwards, it's just like, hey, I was also there for that. I also know it was intense. And like the thing that's not going to make me feel better is you reacting to me like I'm still that person who's in crisis.
Well, yeah. And also maybe like what not to do too. That could be something too, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So what not to do?
Yeah. Did you ever land on anything like that consistently since you like
it's just like, please don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of it was the thing that bothers me a lot is unless somebody also has bipolar disorder and they say, I understand what you're going through, it's like a trigger to be like, you don't though. Like you have, even if you do have bipolar, every breakdown is so unique and different.
Yeah.
And it can be over different things. And like, I think the other thing is problem solving, where in that moment, I do want the problem solved, but that's not going to change my moods right now.
Ooh, that's a good point.
Yeah, like I would like to problem solve after and we can think of solutions and things like that. But in the moment, I just need to like feel all of this and get it out in some kind of healthy way.
Yeah.
I actually talked to my psychiatrist and he had a really good solution of buying dollar store plates and then going to like somewhere with concrete and just smashing them. So I've always had this feeling of like, I have like almost a rage. I need to like punch something or break something. And like, I obviously don't want to break anything or obviously hurt anybody, especially myself. And so I had never had that like way of releasing. But he's like, just buy like $5 store plates and smash them. And like, as soon as I would do that, I would kind of come out of it and I would feel not normal, but I would feel a lot better about myself.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point that you bring up. Just the idea of like addressing the mood first and then addressing what would help make that mood like less. You know, like just being able to hold space for the fact that like you're having these really heavy emotions right now, but like you need to work through that part first.
Yeah.
Yeah. How's that been working out?
Really well, actually.
Yeah.
I think it's a big reason I've had such a lapse in breakdowns over a while.
That's so cool that they helped you figure that out.
Yeah, he's the best psychiatrist ever.
Yeah.
That's cool because like that could work for some person, right? And then like not work nearly as well, but like he suggested it and you were like, this actually like really works. Like
that and cool. He suggested too like having a mantra. I think he said it was think, feel, relax. And so you just kind of repeat that over and you kind of meditate and it's supposed to kind of help you at least calm down. Even if you still have all those emotions, you're at least a little more calm about it. And then you can kind of think of where you're at, what space you're in, how to adapt and how to like relax and calm down. No,
I really appreciate that. Something that like I've been talking to a hypnotherapist. Thank you. You got this.
Cool.
Yeah, I've been talking to a hypnotherapist and he's been helping me a lot. And something that like he had like kind of had me run through last time is like I was saying that like I was having a really hard time with like perspective and stuff because it's like I can't trust my perspective. But he kind of ran me through this thing where he's like, all right, so like you're up in space, you're tethered down to earth, but like, you have this huge perspective on like everything. So like whenever I feel myself getting like too focused in and being like, I think I see it like this, I just imagine that little spaceman hovering out there.
It's like a visual zoom out.
Yeah.
Like
visual zoom out of cool. Like, okay, we're up here, we're looking at the planet and whatever problem I have isn't this like hyper focused.
Acute. Yeah, I like that. That's cool.
Yeah, it's a cute problem to have. That's me.
No, acute.
Oh, okay. Never mind. I was just like, well, it seems kind of big to me, but whatever.
It's really great to just patronize people's problems. No, I meant acute. Like
okay, spaceman.
Very specific versus like no, but that's actually advice I give people a lot of the time when they're like, myself too. Like if I'm really stressed out, try to zoom out. But I like that he gave you like a visual way to like picture yourself, like visually, like your whole body zoomed out from the world. Because I like that.
No, visuals are so important. 100%.
Yeah,
definitely. So what tools help you post breakdown?
Definitely love and support from the people around me. I've kind of grown to find the right people in my corner. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but having somebody in your corner that they don't have to understand, but that doesn't work with you and try to help you and is afraid of you is not going to be healthy for you. I had a lot of friends where I felt like I couldn't tell them anything because I was like, oh, I don't know how they're going to react. I think they might hate me. They might not want to be my friend anymore. And I've slowly kind of gotten in this mindset, well, if they're going to react like that, then we probably can't be close. We can be friends, but like it's probably not going to work out anyways. So I'd say that. And then I would say doing something that you genuinely enjoy. Like, so for me, sitting down and writing music, or for somebody like sitting down and watching your favorite TV show and just kind of disassociating and just decompressing and just letting all the emotions kind of drain out of you before you really start to think of a plan and like what to do, or like call your psychiatrist, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, and I really like what you said about like, I can be friends with this person, but I can't be close with them.
Yeah.
I think that's like realizing the difference between like the place that people have in our life is that like they can be friends with us, but they might not be close with us, or they might be close with us, but they might not be friends with us.
Well, yeah, I like that idea too, because sometimes I think like I've beat myself up before, like why, like I'm sometimes certain people I just rub the wrong way, or vice versa, you know. And I think sometimes we think like, oh, I should be likable to everybody or whatever, but I think like just accepting that we're different than people, and that like certain people aren't going to get us, and vice versa, and they're not going to make us feel good when we're going through something hard, right? Like it might be somebody that you like seeing out, but they're not going to be the person you're going to call when you're having a breakdown, or you know, something like that. So I think like that's like, it's kind of like a boundary, but it also gives people space to like be who they are, you know?
Yeah,
totally. Yeah.
Well, like just understanding that like everybody has a different space in our life that, you know, that they may hold. Like some people can be there during the breakdown. Some people are there to be there after the breakdown. Some people aren't meant to be there at all because they can't handle any part of it. So yeah, we've all been around like someone when you're having like a panic attack and they make it worse. Yeah.
And you're just like, you were literally said the wrong, like the one thing you could have not, like you shouldn't have said.
I've talked about it before, but my ex used to give me hugs when I was having a panic attack.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, I already don't like hugs. So being constricted when I like can't breathe is not what's helping. But
Bro,
like
I don't need it.
People try to help in the ways that they think that like the things that might help them. They're like, oh, I would like a hug right now. And I'm just like, I fucking wouldn't.
Yeah. Well, that's that whole like letting people know, if you can let them know what does and doesn't work for you as much as you know, can really be valuable for the friendship on both ends, right? Because then you don't like cross someone's, you know, make something worse for someone that you're trying to help, and you don't end up like resenting the people that love you because they're trying to help. Yeah, like it's good for everybody involved if you let people know what works and what doesn't work. So
definitely.
100%.
So with breakdowns in the past, what's like been a story where you feel like you really triumphed?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think the single that I just performed, War, that felt like a really big triumph because I had that breakdown and I wrote that song, and I feel like it's one of the best songs I've ever written.
Yeah, I really like that song.
It's very dynamic. It's got a flow to it, and just the lyrics were just so honest. And I don't know, I try to get really poetic with it too, of course, because it's music.
Yeah.
But yeah, that song was definitely one of my biggest triumphs. The other song I performed, Fake Gold, I'd say was another really big triumph for me personally. That song was it's a lot about how I would have these breakdowns every year, and I feel like I ended up in the same place, in the same spot. And actually, after writing that song, things kind of changed.
Really?
I got properly diagnosed. I stopped kind of ending up in that spot. And for a minute, I was like, how can I perform this if I don't really feel it anymore?
Yeah.
But I just kind of go back to that space. And, you know, I had a breakdown fairly recently, about a month ago. And it kind of put me back in that space. And I was like, I can still perform this song.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you could relate to it again almost, or like reconnected with it. It's like that's kind of like how jokes are too. Sometimes like when you have jokes that you're like wrote at a different time in your life, and then you try to tell them, you're like, it's not funny right now. Like I have a joke that I used to do that always did really well. It hasn't been doing well lately because I feel like I'm annoyed with it. Like it doesn't feel as authentic anymore.
Yeah.
But I could totally see that where like it might feel more authentic. Like next time I go through that, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe I'll start saying it again. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and just even recognizing that like this is something that got you through like a period, and it was something that you heavily related to, and that like maybe even if you're not currently relating to it, there's still room for somebody else to, you know, find truth in that and be like, oh yeah, I've definitely been there, or I'm still there right now.
Yeah,
absolutely. I actually, when I wrote War and I released it, it was the first time I really talked about being bipolar with anybody outside of my mom. And I found out that one of my close friends was bipolar, because when I released it, she reached out to me.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm bipolar as well. And then slowly through like out my life, I feel like every like week I meet somebody now that's bipolar, and it's just because I talk about it more.
Yeah.
And then it kind of gives somebody a space to be like, oh, I am too. And then it's really fun. Well, fun might not be
it's a blast.
Yeah, but like, it's really nice because then I have somebody I can talk to when I'm going through stuff. I have somebody that relates to what I'm going through, someone who actually does understand.
Yeah.
That was a big part of those breakdowns, was that I felt like I was completely alone, and I had nobody to talk to about it. And if I talked to somebody about it, it would freak them out, and like, yeah. And so having that come out of a song is just probably the best part, I think.
Yeah, I like that. It's like you channeled it through your art, and then you were able to connect with people that you were like people that were close to you, but you hadn't connected over that.
Yeah.
I like that it was like their music that was like, oh, actually, we're both going through the same thing, even though like you didn't necessarily talk about it, but you sang about it, and then they got it. I like that. That's like a cool way to like share with people.
Well, that was actually what we connected over, because when I had like performed, I'd done music and comedy, and I had talked about either having bipolar or experiencing it with like my music, and you just came up, you're like, oh yeah, no, I can totally relate. And I was just like, okay, cool. And it's like somebody who does totally relate. Yeah.
That was your guys' meet cute.
Yeah, it was pretty sweet. But I would say that like by being more transparent about what's going on, it is the thing that allows other people to not feel so alone in that, you know,
totally,
and being able to talk about it, even if it's something that is still kind of fresh to you. It creates a point of connection where there might not have been one, because sometimes when we do feel this stuff, we do kind of isolate. We do kind of think that we're the only one going through it. We do have all these like interpretations of how it's going. And I think that there's just a lot of power in being transparent. And I appreciate that that's something that you do in your music.
Thank you. I appreciate that's something you do in your music too.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you.
I like that because it's not only did it make you're like ideally helping other people feel less alone, you also like made yourself feel less alone in the same process. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's extra cool.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, we're going to take a real quick commercial break. We'll be right back with the smoke break. We're here every Sunday from 9 to 10 a.m. on Shady Pines Radio, as well as Pretty Dope Experience Radio. We are back with the smoke break. We might have figured out our technical difficulties. I'm your host, your old pal Zaid, here with Zoe Schwartz.
Hello.
And Micki XO.
Heyo.
All right. So this next portion, I would like Zoe, take it away.
We wanted to talk about neurodivergence because we chatted and we all identify as being neurodivergent. And then I got curious and I was like, what exactly does it mean? Because I think there's a lot of like,
good question.
It's like a buzzword, you know? So I looked it up and I think this is what I thought, which is basically like anything that makes your brain different, like the way that your brain develops different is considered a neurodivergence, I guess, but it's also not a medical term. So that's probably important to say, but it's kind of like an umbrella term for anything where like if your brain like chemistry or design is different, and like often think people with ADHD or with people with ADHD often identify as neurodivergent. But I also think like a lot of people with mental illnesses identify as neurodivergent too. So I just thought it would be cool to talk about. I identify as having ADHD, and I was just wondering, like, with you, like, do you identify? Well, we agreed we all identify as neurodivergent, but like, what is that?
But do you still?
No, yeah, but like, what does that look like for you, or like, how did that process of identifying that way, like, look for you? I guess.
Yeah, definitely identify as neurodivergent still.
Yeah,
still cool.
Not 5 minutes ago, still now.
Yeah. I'm diagnosed with ADHD, and I also have bipolar 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I was misdiagnosed with depression for 11 years, which I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And so for a while I identified as that. I think a lot of it came to fruition with misdiagnoses. I wasn't diagnosed for both things until a lot later in life.
Mm-hmm.
Bipolar disorder, I was about 25, which I think is pretty typical with people that are bipolar.
Yeah.
And then ADHD, I was diagnosed in, I don't remember the exact year, but like I think my senior year of college.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually remember.
Wow, that's a late diagnosis.
Yeah. I remember the guy that diagnosed me. He's like, not only are you in the top 1 percentile, he's like, I just don't understand how you've made it this far in education.
Yeah.
Without being medicated. And I was like, me too.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really good point to bring up, is that, like, you know, if you are diagnosed, you know, then it's a little bit easier to support you.
Absolutely.
What difference do you think it would have made for you had you gotten a diagnosis earlier?
Oh man, huge difference. I would have been on the right medication. I would have been able to identify what I was going through more accurately. Mm-hmm. When I was on medication for depression, I think I went through 17 medication changes.
Wow.
And it was like upping my medication. It was changing medications. I was on 150 milligrams of Zoloft at one point.
Jesus.
Yeah, per day.
So I didn't mean to judge, but
No,
God,
no,
that's
it's
a
a
lot.
lot.
That's-
I don't know the percentage.
I'm judging your doctor, not you.
You'd think by then they'd be like, something's probably not working here.
Yes.
Yeah, and I even actually brought up the fact that I might be bipolar a couple of times, and they were like, oh, no, I don't think so.
They're like, you'll feel differently in a sec.
Yeah, they're like, we just got to up your medications. I'm like, I was like, me being naive, I'm like, that sounds great, cool.
Yeah,
like, whatever's
cool.
going to help. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Zane? How do you?
Let's see. I identify as having ADHD and I identify as having bipolar. Also, not bipolar 2. I'm not sure which one it actually is, but I have like more of a rapid cycling where it's like, hey, everything's going great. No, it's all awful. It's all bad. It'll never be good again. And it'll be amazing for forever. And it's bad again for forever. So that's bipolar for me. But I would say that, if I had gotten diagnosed earlier, which I actually had gotten diagnosed with bipolar earlier, I just didn't believe it, and I feel like that's kind of like a tendency that we have is, we get the diagnosis and we're just like, no, that's what crazy people have. And it's just like, well, you're one of them.
It's also like that paranoia too that like pops up.
Yeah,
exactly. It's just like, I don't want these labels. I don't, if this is true, what does this mean for me? So I had a really difficult time, but I think it would have given me a lot of like clarity into why I was doing what I was doing, why I was having such dramatic mood swings, the paranoia, like that's something that I'm finding out a lot of people with bipolar struggle with. And that's something that like, I had no idea. I was just like, no, everyone's vampires and they won't tell me. Like I was convinced of it, and it's like, I feel like just understanding more about myself and understanding what other people are going through has just made like that struggle a little bit easier to navigate.
100%.
Yeah, no, I can relate too. I think for me, it was like a lot of like shame and like low self-esteem and stuff, I think was definitely a big outcome of being different and not understanding that I was different because of something specific about my brain and just thinking I was like difficult and annoying and like certain stuff was just like not interesting to me enough that I still am the same way. Like if something's not interesting to me, my brain just like bloop, just shuts off. Like I don't. Yeah. And even now, like I've taken medication, I've not taken it, but I think if I would have got diagnosed younger, I don't know that I would have like necessarily wanted to medicate when I was younger or that my parents would have, but I think it would have helped me with my self-worth and with a lot of shame. I think I internalized a lot of shame. And something you said made me think about this is like a lot of people mask, like because there isn't as much I don't know, research about like female identified people with ADHD. I feel like, or people that are socialized as females. I think that like a lot of women I've talked to that identify as having the ADHD now and like a later in life diagnosis are like, I just thought I had to do everything, try like a million times harder than everybody. And I think maybe that's also like part of the way we're socialized. But yeah, I feel like I've heard that a lot. Like, oh, I thought it was normal to be working like twice as hard as everybody else. And just not saying it was harder because we just have to deal with it. Like, is that ring true for you?
Yeah, or just feeling like, oh, everybody else works this hard too and I'm just not aware of it.
Yeah, because Yeah, because you're like, I'm just keeping it inside. Yeah, but if you were like, this is really hard, somebody might have been like, oh, it doesn't actually have to be that hard, or it's not that hard for me. And then, maybe you could have, sharing our struggles can help us like notice that we're actually dealing with something maybe. Right?
Yeah. Well, I like what you said about the shame aspect because like, I think there was a lot of shame for me with the bipolar because like my moods were so out of control. And that's like the thing that everyone's just like, no, just have a positive attitude and just get over it. And it's like, being distracted is something that like people might have a little bit more compassion for, but like when moods are extreme, people are a lot less patient. They're a lot less patient. If you get angry easily, if you get sad easily, like people are just like, why don't you just not think about the things that make you feel like that? And it's like, oh, well, you don't know this, but I have ADHD and I'm thinking about all of the things that make me sad, mad, and fucking glad sometimes, depending on how bipolar I'm feeling.
I just thought of something like maybe because the moods are extreme, like maybe part of the reason why it's so hard is other people feel triggered sometimes by like, right? Because like if you're angry and like maybe it's not really directed at the people around you, but it feels like it is to them and they don't understand what you're going through, then it's like, in that way, like, and I could relate to that just being like a sensitive, emotional person. Like you can evoke emotions in other people when you're struggling and then and it can just be exacerbate like what you're dealing with. Yeah.
No, I think that's a really good point to bring up is just that like, there is a certain amount of like dealing with other people dealing with what they're seeing in us, Yeah. Have you felt like the people in your life have been understanding of your neurodivergence?
I feel like it's been same thing with me. Like I didn't get diagnosed until like I really got re-diagnosed a couple years ago and I'm almost 39. So like I went most of my life like knowing I had it, but like kind of not really believing in it or like poo-pooing it a little bit, So I think that's why No, I don't feel, I feel like, and even now I feel like, oh, people are like, oh, whatever. Like the people that know me forever, have known me forever, they just know the way I am, but they're like, oh yeah, we're all whatever. But I'm like, tell me I'm not, like, especially talkative, and like I interrupt and I try to finish people's sentences, and like, I do all the things. And so I think there's a lot of people that are I think it's also maybe like my age, like people were a little less likely to be, because I think it's when people first started getting diagnosed and there was a lot of like over medication. So I think there are some there's some stigma around it.
Yeah, no, it's understandable.
Yeah. And everyone's like, everyone's ADHD now. I'm like, yeah, I just think there were a lot of people that were, and they just didn't have room to talk about it. And so there's a lot of people coming out of the woodwork being like, I think I'm different.
Yes.
But people really like to be like, well, that's how you should prove that it's fake. And you're like, no, how about that's how we just proved that like people didn't have a voice before, right? Like, but I feel like that argument is used for a lot of stuff. Like, well, now everyone's this or everyone's that. It's like everyone always was different. We just didn't let them express it, right?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. What about you, Micki? Do you feel like you've had like some acceptance for your neurodivergence?
Definitely not at first.
Okay.
When I was growing up, I grew up in a military household where like even emotions are just like a no-go. Yeah. Let alone a mental illness.
Sure.
And so,
similar.
Yeah, when I first before I was diagnosed, I actually found out that something like might be off when I was dating my ex-boyfriend, and he did a lot of like research on psychology and stuff, and he's like, I don't want you to take this the wrong way. He's like, but I don't think you're like, I think there's like something like different with your brain. And I was like, oh,
thank
okay.
you.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't really know how to take it at first. I'm like, is that like a bad thing or a good thing? And like, I kind of did some self-reflection, and I was like, yeah, I think he might be right. So I talked to my parents because I was in like high school, and I was like, yeah, I think I should go see like a psychiatrist or psychologist, and they were both like, no, you're fine. And I think
super helpful.
Yeah, I was like, cool. I guess I'll just suffer.
You're right. We don't need to look at this at all. That's fine.
Which is pretty self-aware for a teenager to be like, I think I need some help, like.
Yeah, exactly. And I think every parent doesn't want to believe there's something like wrong with their child. Not that it's wrong, but like
their perception of it.
Yeah,
there's a lot of stigma about mental health.
Yeah, and I think especially at that period of time, it was very stigmatized, and so they're like, "Oh, it's wrong. Like my child's perfect. I want them to be perfect." Like,
I didn't do anything to mess them up. All right, is that what everyone's looking at? Because I didn't.
Yeah, exactly. And they just gone through a divorce. I think that was another part of it. Was like they're like, "Oh God, like what did our divorce do to her?" And like,
we can't deal with another like thing. Yeah.
And like I think as I have grown, I think it's like I said, I didn't really talk about it at all until like the last couple years. And I have a partner that like just adores me, and he's incredibly great with breakdowns and like handling all the different like mood swings and stuff. Yeah. And it's the first time I've had somebody like that, and he's just like incredible about it. My mom has come around, and she actually was the one that convinced my dad to have me get some help. Wow. And now she's like the biggest supporter and like fan, and she's just like anything she can do to help, she wants to help all the time. And so it's really done a 180, but it took a long time to get there. There was so much stigma, and I went to a Catholic school for 13 years, which so add that into the military. Yeah, it's everything. A lot.
Was hush. I'm surprised you talk about mental illness at all.
Yeah. That's great though that they came around. It sounds like your mom is like a really, and I feel bad. I said that. I was like, no, they don't. No, I think like maybe like the term, I don't feel like, but I do think that yes, the people that love me do support me, because you have to be able to support me through the things I deal with, or we probably wouldn't be close, Yeah. And I think the people that understand that it is like a neurodivergence probably have even more patience for it. But that's awesome that you like have such a supportive partner, and that your mom was able to come around and have your back. What about you, Zane?
Yeah. I feel like for me, I've had varying degrees of support. And I feel like it depends on which one it is. Like ADHD, like nobody will be like, wow, you don't have a lot of energy. Like a lot of people aren't going to argue with that one. But bipolar, the mood disorder one, I feel like is the hardest one for people to kind of get, because like when you are in a mood, like it can be destructive, so like trying to understand that there's context to that destruction is kind of a difficult thing for people to grasp.
Totally.
Whereas, maybe being distracted, you could chalk it up to having ADHD, but like being a dick, you're just like, oh, he was probably just being a dick. And it's just like, no, man, like if I'm not a dick in every other situation, and I'm a dick in this situation, can we not agree that there was something off about either the situation or about my reaction to it? Was that not disproportionate to like what was happening? And if that's a pattern, then like, how can we recognize that, so that way you understand that the next time that I'm feeling like that, I'm not just being a dick, I'm reacting to my mood disorder.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would definitely say that like the support it's been to varying degrees, but the people who do understand, like there's been people who I'm just like, like I feel like I have to explain this entire story to, and they also struggle with bipolar, and they're just like, No, like just understanding that you have bipolar is enough context for me. And I'm just like, that's so freeing because
Yeah.
like to everybody else, like they need, well, you were a dick. So then like, why did this happen? Then why did this happen? Then why did this happen? And it's like with the people who really do get it, they're just like, yeah, I could see how that would happen.
Yeah, they're like, no sweat, man. I get it. Like, happened once. We're good.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, you know, just the support that we get with having any sort of neurodivergence is extremely important. Who do you feel like in your life has been especially supportive of you being neurodivergent?
Definitely my mom and my boyfriend.
Yeah.
My boyfriend's actually dated people that are bipolar before me, and so he has a pretty good grasp on how to handle things, what to do in like a crisis situation. Yeah.
That could be a recipe for disaster, but I'm glad that it's not, because two bipolar people, I could see them just reacting to each other and being like, oh, I'm heightened. But
well, he's not bipolar. He's dated people in the past.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so that's how he's kind of learned how to deal with it. And then also his mom is a psychologist, so he understands, or she was, and so he understands a lot about it that way too.
Yeah.
But then my mom came in, God bless her, knowing nothing about bipolar, not knowing how to deal with it or react to it, and every time she's just asked like what she can do to help, and she's just gotten better at like figuring out like when I'm starting to spiral and when I don't know, just helping in every way. And so I think those are probably the two most important people neurodivergent wise that have helped me out.
Yeah, that's awesome. Zoe, what about you real quick?
The most helpful, probably my mom too, because I've also like think she's probably has ADHD too, which I think there's like a genetic component. So I think my mom, she gets me the most. And so and I think honestly, I'm that person for her too. Like, I think we are so similar that the parts of like, my sisters will complain about my mom or whatever. And I'm like, I do that too, you know, like, so it's like, and even like I'll do annoying stuff and I'm like, got that from my mom. Like, you know?
Yeah.
So I think probably my mom, because one, I am the most similar to her. And so I think she feels that way from me too. Like we are able to give it to each other both back and forth kind of.
Well, mine's my mom too.
Aww.
So go moms. Thanks for being supportive.
It's a week late, but
I was gonna say happy belated Mother's Day.
Yeah, happy belated Mother's Day. I actually, real quick before we go to commercial break, I called my mom on Hispanic Mother's Day because I saw a Hispanic family talking about Mother's Day, and I was just like, oh God, I got to call my mom. And I wished her happy Mother's Day, and she's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Still counts.
Yeah. So she got 2 of them this year. So.
There you go.
All right, well, we're going to take a real quick commercial break, and we'll be right back with the smoke break. We're here every Sunday from 9 to 10 a.m. on Shady Pines Radio and Pretty Dope Experience Radio. I'm your host, your old pal Zane, here with Zoe Schwartz.
Hello.
And Micki XO.
Hey, yo.
All right, so we're going to wrap up with one more segment, and we're going to talk about empathy.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we were just talking about in our last segment about the people in our life that have empathy for us and how important that's been to us. What would you say is the importance of empathy in a relationship?
Me?
Yes.
Empathy in a relationship. Well, I mean, I think it's for anybody. I think empathy is important. And I think like empathy is what connects people a lot of the time, right? Like when we can identify with other people's experiences, or when we can like feel like compassion for other people's emotions, like I think, or connected to other people's emotions. I think it's a really big part of like how we feel connected and supported to other people. But something I also learned about empathy recently that I think is interesting is that we don't need to have empathy. Part of the problem with like racism and like other things like that, like other things that we don't understand, like things that we are socialized to not understand about the way we harm each other and stuff. I think like the idea that we have to understand someone else's experience in order to have compassion for them, I think is actually harmful in some ways. And I think we should be able to take people's like expression of something that's harmful to them at face value and say, I don't, because that's part of the problem is like, if we have a privilege or a different position, social position than the person, we're probably not going to be able to empathize. And so I think part of being a good person is having compassion, even when you don't know what it feels like.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
I think it allows you to be compassionate towards more people when you don't require empathy as a way to care that they're struggling. You know?
Yeah.
So I think it goes both ways.
Does that make you think of anything, Micki?
Yeah, it does. That's funny. In my head, I went, empathy is everything. So it's a little bit different answer.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it like that before either, but yeah.
I think in any kind of relationship or any kind of like societal, like any kind of society, you need empathy, because if everybody's just out for themselves all the time, nothing's ever going to get done. People are just there's going to be more people like killing each other and harming each other and greed going on. But I think outside of society too, in a relationship, I don't think you can have a successful relationship without empathy.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Like the best relationships I have had are ones where we connect through like empathy, where it's just like, I may not have been there, but I can understand why that was harmful to you, or why that was so hurtful, or why your experience of it was so intense. And likewise, like people understanding that about me, because it's like I feel like there's a certain point of connection of just like having common interests, you know, like just kind of like base level. I like this too. But like when you see somebody struggling and you recognize that they're struggling and you feel like you've been recognized for your struggle, like that is what connects me the most with people.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think so. I think so too. The people that I'm closest with, but I also think, I think I just had a thought about what I said, but then it fell out of my head.
No, you're fine. You're fine. So what helps you be more empathetic to other people, Micki?
That's a really good question. I think, first of all, the common ground is usually a big thing, but I think also just having struggled myself, and even if it's a different struggle, just knowing like how hard it is to get through it. Like if we go back to mental health, if somebody has depression and I have bipolar, we might not have the same mental illness, but I can totally relate to the breakdown they're having or how they're having a hard time.
Yeah.
And I think empathy just as a whole, like it's just so necessary for any kind of relationship in your life. Woo. Friendship or otherwise.
Yeah. I was like, what was that?
Driving the point home, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, I think what I was thinking. Yeah, no, I think. Oh God, that distracted me.
That distracted you? No, you're totally fine. You're totally fine.
I keep having thoughts, and then my brain's like, no, just listen to that sound. There's a squirrel. Oh, I wonder what that is. It's my neurodivergence showing up.
It's a bird. It's a plane. It's my neurodivergence.
What was I going to say about empathy? I don't know. Zane, what are you going to say about it?
Yeah. Well, I guess for me, it's what was my question? Sorry, I also have ADHD, and that
there was a loud noise, and we got distracted.
Yeah, we all got distracted. No, it's totally fine. But yeah, I don't know. I guess like empathy for me is just it's really important, and it's something that like you don't find in everybody. You know, it's something that like when you do find it, like it means just that much more. You know, like some people will listen to your story because they think it makes you feel better, and some people will listen to your story because it like makes them feel better having, you know, like tried to help. But some people will like empathize with your story because they know that it helps. You know, like they'll try to understand it from every aspect just so that way so you feel seen.
Yeah. You know, something I just thought of is that thing you said earlier about how like sometimes like if somebody tries to like say, I think it was your mom you were referencing, like saying, I know how you feel, and like that can be a trigger. Yeah. So I think that's like the other side of empathy, right? Where like sometimes I think maybe that's where I didn't even understand, like it's not like you can have compassion without empathy. And sometimes it's valuable to acknowledge that you don't understand someone's experience, because sometimes people do need to feel unique in their experiences. Yeah. But I think that's and as like a mental health professional, it's something I'm trying to navigate, because I think it is really like a thin line between like, no, I know what you're going through, and that's being like, no, you don't fucking know what I'm going through. Yeah. But then sometimes people really do need to hear, I know what you're going through, you know? So it's like trying to determine when this person, like determine when when you need to go as far as empathy and when you don't need to go as far as empathy, and the person doesn't need you to say, I get it, because that makes them feel less heard in their experience. And maybe just saying, I just acknowledge your struggle. Maybe I don't need to feel it with you, but I feel compassion and pain for you and what you're going through. But I don't know. I think empathy is like a kind of a muddy term in that way, or the way we understand it is
and I think a lot of people get empathy and sympathy confused. I hear people mix up the word, and like that drives me nuts. They're just like, I'm sympathetic, and I'm just like, what you mean is empathetic, because I don't want sympathy.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, totally. So do you think compassion is more like sympathy then? Like the way I'm using that word compassion, do you think those two things
like do you think do I think compassion is a step below like empathy, where it's like you don't have to, you're not like, I'm feeling this with you, but you're also not like, I feel bad for you for this happening.
Yeah. Like there's nuance around how we care about other people's feelings. I guess it's sort of like
I think compassion is kind of like the middle ground of like it's saying that you acknowledge their struggle, but it's not saying that you feel bad for them because it's happening, and it's not saying I've had that happen to me, so you know I know what it's like.
Well, and I think that is like one of the, like with emotional intelligence, right? Like knowing when someone needs to be validated, like I get it, and then another time when probably that isn't going to make them feel like they need to feel unique in their experience. You know,
just want you to listen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. What would be the most validating thing for you to hear when you're looking for maybe some compassion or empathy?
Definitely not, I feel bad for you. That's like the worst thing someone could probably ever say.
Yeah.
I mean, it might work for some people, but majority of people I know, they would be like, that's unfortunate that you feel that way.
Yeah.
I'd say the things I look for most, understanding is always a big one. Especially since I'm still fairly newly diagnosed with bipolar, and finding people that understand has been a huge help and like joy to me.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe joy is not the right word.
It
but
might
like,
be.
it's joyous for me. I
Yeah.
don't like wish everybody had bipolar, but like
No, but you wish everybody
It's
could.
my evil villain plan.
Being understood is, I think, something you can wish for everybody, right? Like, yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah.
I think it's understanding, and I just think it's just like you say, compassion. Like I think everybody wishes, at least majority of people wish that everybody in the world cared about everybody enough to like fight things like world hunger or homelessness.
Mhm.
And it's a sad reality that they don't care enough. But I think the people that have compassion, you can always tell when it's genuine compassion versus like sympathy or like trying to make a point to like feel better about themselves or to like to prove something to other people.
Yeah.
And so I think genuine compassion is what's needed versus
Yeah.
like just compassion in general.
Well, and I like what you said about understanding, because it's like I feel like there can't really be a true level of compassion or empathy without like a true level of understanding. Like if you haven't gotten to a point where you're like, I feel understood in what I'm going through, therefore any like empathy or compassion that you're giving me is with a true understanding of the situation. Like it always feels disingenuous, because it's like, oh, you got as much information as you needed to be like, I'm sorry that happened, and then now we're done talking about it.
Yeah.
That makes me think about like somebody getting educated about like if you don't have the same mental illness as somebody or the same whatever experiences, like we can educate ourselves about other people's experiences. And I think that's like another way of showing, like you were saying, kind of like someone showing you they care is like, hey, I went and learned about this thing that you're experiencing, even though I can't personally experience it. I know you're experiencing it and I care about you. And like now I have more knowledge about the thing you're experiencing. Like that can be kind of like a gift to give to somebody too, right?
Definitely.
That's how I feel about like my boyfriend. He's not bipolar, but he has done a lot of like not even just research on bipolar, but just like me personally and how I feel and how it affects me and how he can help navigate that for me whenever I feel like I can't control myself.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
No, I had somebody recently, like I had been talking to them and I was just like, hey, I'm not doing well. I don't think we should talk right now. And like, that was something that like, I don't usually do, because usually like I will be in like a crisis or I'll be having a breakdown. And it's almost like I just take everyone along for the ride and see who sticks around.
Yeah,
And
totally. I can relate.
But I was just like, you know what? I really care about you. I think putting distance between us for right now would be the best thing. And so that's what I did. And then they were like, okay, cool. Well, when we, reconnect, hopefully we can talk more. And I was like, just having somebody who was understanding enough to be like, you need space and I can respect that space meant so much. And it gave me like so much faith in people, because I've had so many people where it's like I've said I have to walk away, or I say that I can't do this right now, and like, if you can't do it right now, then don't bother doing it forever, and it's the people almost like hold it over your head, and I'm like, you're not even understanding why I'm asking for the space. You know what I mean? I'm asking for space so that way I can preserve our relationship, not so I can destroy it in some inadvertent way.
That just made me think about how like when you do struggle with mental illness, sometimes it forces you to like have better boundaries. And then that made me think about like the idea of like how do either of you guys relate to this? But like the idea that like being neurodivergent or having like different brains or whatever can also like, we also have gifts that come out of there, like different skills.
Oh yeah.
Like what do you identify as having like certain things that you feel like are like strengths of the things that you struggle with as well?
Yeah, actually, not to tie it back to our current topic, but I think empathy is a huge one. I think.
Oh yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, I think empathy, and then more obvious one is like channeling it through art and having like kind of this platform to not only speak about, but to I can't think of the words. Oh my gosh, but yeah, having art and being able to like
Express
take a breakdown and exactly have some kind of way to express it. And I think
an outlet maybe.
I don't know if this is like bad to say. I think it makes people more interesting.
No, I think that's
to have like something that's a little different with them. And so I think it's not fun to have bipolar, but it does make you more interesting and it makes you more empathetic. And I think those are both two really good strengths to have in life.
Yeah.
I would agree with that, especially with bipolar, because it's like having experienced such extreme emotions, I'm like more empathetic for people's extreme emotions. If somebody's really going through it and being like, oh, just I've been there. Like, I've been that angry. I've been that sad. I've been that mad, just being able to see that. I would say like a kind of a superpower too is just having experienced those extreme emotions. I have a better way of explaining them, and putting them into music, putting them into comedy, because it's like, because I've experienced the strongest what for me feels like the strongest form of anger, the strongest form of sadness. It's like being able to put that into words for people who've experienced even just a fraction of it, people really relate. They may not understand it exactly, but they understand a part of it at least.
Yeah. When you're kind of educating people who don't have those experiences too by sharing it in your art too. Like,
yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Actually, Micki XO and I made a song called Better Man, which I'm working on releasing. And it's actually just kind of about bipolar and those moments when you lose yourself and you say things that you don't mean. And I think that, I have a lot of people in my life who are empathetic for those moments, but I've definitely had people in the past that I've lost because I didn't know how to put into words like, hey, that wasn't me in that moment. Like that was me in that moment, but that wasn't me in that moment.
I was like, oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
That or not even realizing that like, it's so for me, like when I would like make mistakes and before I was medicated as bipolar, I was like, oh, there's just something wrong with me. I didn't have a platform or any kind of knowledge about what was going on, and so I didn't even know how to apologize because I couldn't even explain it.
Yeah. I think that's a really important thing to bring up is like you it's hard to apologize when you don't even know where that came from. Like, they're like, where did that come from? And you're like, I also don't know. I can also agree.
Totally.
That was out of hand. I don't know why that happened either. But once you have that empathy for yourself, then you can, offer other people the opportunity to meet you in that same space.
Yeah, I was just thinking, for me, I was thinking like, it's almost like having a label that helps me understand the behaviors that I do that are more difficult, allows me to feel less shame and acknowledging the way that it impacts other people, because I don't feel like I'm being like, I'm just like this and I just hurt people or I just annoy people or whatever. It's like, I can say sorry. It's easier to say sorry. It's easier to acknowledge when you understand that there's something that's like physiologically going on in your brain.
Yeah.
Or I don't know if that's the right word, but like biologically going on in your body that's making that thing more challenging for you or your emotional regulation.
Yeah, that's perfect. All right. Well, that's all we got time for. Bye.
Is that really?
Yep. We hit the 30-minute mark.
Yeah.
That was it. Thanks for hanging out for the smoke break. That might have been abrupt. Bye.
Bye.